Hi, food fans. Alton Brown here for the Alton Browncast. We've decided to do something a little different for this episode. Typically, we have some kind of conversation with someone interesting, but we're going to break that this time by mostly having conversation with me. My dodo, that is Director of Digital Ops, Sarah DeHeer, brought up the point that there have been a lot of questions leading up to the release of my new book, Everyday Cook, which is my first book in 5 years. And she said, why don't we just knock out a podcast about the book? Because a lot of people have questions about the book. So I'm going to subject myself to however many minutes of cross-examination and examination from Sarah's interwebs questions. And they're all actually, this is all about EDC, about Everyday Cook?
This is all about Everyday Cook.
All right. Well, take it away, and I will be as honest as I can. I should say, in the spirit of full disclosure, that Sarah shot the book. The photos in the book were taken by her, all with an iPhone. So that's kind of one of the things that makes the book special. So there you go. Does that mean you get a question?
No, and we have to mention Megan Splon.
Megan Splon, who came to me as an intern on Good Eats. She styled the book. So basically it was the three of us chewing away on this project. So anyway, go ahead.
Everyday Cook.
Everyday Cook.
Before I jump into social questions, the obvious question that I think so many people have is why such a huge gap in between the last Good Eats cookbook and Everyday Cook?
You know what it really came down to? All right, confession. I didn't have anything I wanted to write about. I mean, it's easy to say I was busy. I was doing live stage shows, and building that whole thing up, or trying to with the Edible Inevitable tour and with Eat Your Science, and I was busy making Cutthroat Kitchen. But the truth was, I just didn't know what I wanted to write about.
A true confession. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Towards the end of Good Eats, you had lost a great amount of weight.
Yeah, I found most of it again, but yeah.
Do you find that maybe led to some of the weight on producing a new cookbook at all? Because maybe you weren't trying as many new foods, you weren't inspired by...
Well, two things. One, everybody wanted me to do, when I did, I lost 50 pounds on what was called the Diet of 4 Lists, and everybody wanted me to write a book about that diet.
Yeah, people still ask for
it. But I didn't want to. The truth is those weren't actually very happy days, and my relationship with food became complex and unhappy. Other relationships in my life became complex and unhappy. And I think that for a while, food and I were not warm and fuzzy friends anymore. I maybe got a little obsessed with weight loss and maybe lost more than I should have. Now I've gone back kind of the other way a little bit. But there was definitely a few years where I just didn't have anything to really say about food.
Fair enough. I think before we can move forward and talk about Everyday Cook, I have to...
Is this you, or are you just asking questions from the interwebs?
I think...
Because this is sounding kind of Barbara Wawa here.
Bob.
I'm not going to cry.
I
just want you to know I'm not going
to
to cry. Well, all right, go ahead. But this is sounding kind of personal. Go ahead.
Your talents as a cinematographer, the way you started in the industry behind the camera instead of in front of it, you understanding the technical aspects of how to compose a photo, how to take a photo. It all led to the creative of Everyday Cook. So I have to, I think, fair enough, I think you'll agree now, talk about that a little bit before I dive into the little wows of the book and how it was shot.
The little wows, because there are no big wows. No kidding. Yes, I come from a visual background, a cinematographer and a director, and Good Eats was a very visual show. And I'll be honest, since not making that show, and I don't even know how many years it's been now, I haven't had a visual outlet, really, because I don't have anything to do with the way that a show like Cutthroat Kitchen looks. I didn't have one. So the composing of shots, the producing of visual images was something that I've really missed. And so one of the big things about Everyday Cook is the photographs. And although you took the photographs, and I'm glad that you did, because, I mean, by the way, if you follow Sarah on Instagram, you'll know what I'm talking about. You're a very good compositionalist, and you've got a fantastic eye. I wanted to be able to produce literally like stories. There are 100 photographs in the book, as you well know, and each one of them is very complex in its own way. They're still lifes. They tell tales. There's a lot going on in them. So I think that for me, the book, once I realized that we were going to turn it into a visual project, everything changed for me, because it wasn't just about, oh, well, I want these recipes and I want this food, and we're going to arrange it by time of day instead of by ingredient. We're going to do all these things. What it really came down to is, holy crap, we're going to shoot 100 photographs, big photographs, for a book on an iPhone, and it's always going to be looking down. And that, as a filmmaker, is a very kind of groovy way of approaching a project, by saying we're going to choose a tool and we're going to choose a particular style, the direct overhead, and we're going to have to find a creatively engaging way to work within those confines. My motto always in production has been, you've got to be able to turn liabilities into assets. You have to be able to look at any limitation and find freedom in it. And so when we made this decision, and I don't even remember how it happened. I don't remember the day where all of a sudden I looked up and said, we're going to do this on a phone. But you and I are both very much affected by Instagram and are very aware of how Instagram has changed the visual language of our culture.
How people are consuming food is incredibly different.
Absolutely. I would even say that Instagram is the single most important media driving factor in the world of food today.
I stand behind that.
It's not Yelp, it's not a magazine, it's not a website, it's Instagram. And so we look at food differently now. As you know, there are firms now that do nothing but consult restaurants on how to do their lighting so that they'll be Instagram friendly.
Instagrammable.
Yeah, Instagrammable. Yeah. It's a huge thing. So for us to look at a project and say, well, we're going to take that approach with a cookbook, is in a very personal way. I mean, as you know, all the stuff that are in the photographs, that's my stuff.
It is. We didn't go rent a studio.
No. I mean, it's shot in my place. That, yes, I went out and found a better hubcap for the chips and the salsa. Well, here, I'll ask you. It's the first time you photographed a book, yes?
That is correct.
That is correct. Was there ever a time where you're like, oh crap, he's scaring me because he's plating on hubcaps and slide carousels? And I mean, I know the shots that you don't like. You hate that kimchi crab cake shot.
I think if I didn't know you, I would have been scared. But knowing you and your brand, and knowing you are a little bit odd and not normal, and which is what I appreciate and really like about you, I wasn't. I was expecting it. But to throw that back at you, you're talking about these confines. It's one thing to say, okay, we're going to shoot it just like Instagram, but why all overhead? Even I want to know this answer.
Overhead is the hardest angle for anything. And yet, movies aren't shot from all overhead. So I'd never done a project shot overhead. Commercials, I mean, yes, maybe now, but when I was shooting TV commercials and music videos, you didn't do that. It's the hardest angle to play.
It is.
Why do people not shoot much overhead food? Now, I know that the trend on video now is there's a lot of overhead.
It's completely
food.
Changed.
And I would like to think that we were partly responsible for that, because in the later days of Good Eats, we were doing a vast amount of work with straight down shots and trying to pioneer the way that could look and feel and the things you could do. But it's a hard angle, and it requires a very architectural eye. And for framing, it's like you're on an XY axis only. You're literally shooting 2 dimensions. You miss the entire third dimension. There is no depth because everything's on one field. And when you're shooting the way we did on a phone, where focus is you can address this. Focus. Oh my God. Remember when we were shooting the mussels and the steam coming up? Oh my God.
We'll get there.
It's so hard. So you're having to look at these things and saying, okay, I now have to lose one entire dimension, one entire axis of information. And so you're looking at still lifes in their purest, most architectural form. And I don't know why Well, maybe I do, because like, you know, the second that you come off that angle,
Yep.
then everything becomes about the angle. You know, how do we turn? Do we turn this way? Do we look this way? Are we 45 degrees off, or are we 30 degrees off? And I just wanted that to go away. And I was like, if every single shot is done on the same device with the same lens and the same angle, then we have to be even more creative. We have to be more savvy with our lighting. We have to style the food even better because we have removed all of the little tricks. And I admit, it's because in everything I do, I want to do something that somebody else hasn't done. I would rather be original than good. I always have. And so to put us under that, to say we're going to do what's never been done before. Has anybody ever shot a book? I mean, there are some books that have a lot of overhead photography.
Books, whether there's cookbooks, I have.
Well, there are. I've seen a few books that, you know,
shot.
a huge amount of overhead shooting. But to be as restrictive as we were with saying we're not even going to use a DSLR. We don't even have lens options. We're shooting with the Brownie Instamatic camera of our age. The Polaroid of our age, which is the phone.
Back up just a bit, because you had mentioned lighting.
Yeah.
Talk about, I mean, one of the most rigorous challenges of this project was the fact that you shot. I mean, you set up shots lighting-wise for cinematography, not like...
We did not use still lights.
No.
We did not use strobes. We used motion picture lighting. We used film lighting. And we used a lot of mixed lighting. And we used a lot of natural lighting where we were using negative fill to block light and shape light. I don't come from a still world. I don't know how to use strobes. I don't know how to set shots for strobes. I just don't know. And that was probably a disservice to you in a way, because the second that you decide to use motion picture lighting for stills, you are trapped in a world of limited depth of field above all. And I know, I mean, there were times where you were dealing with a couple of inches of depth of field because we didn't have the stop. You know, we weren't strobing. So we didn't have that split second where, you're actually shooting at an 11. Oh my gosh. Well, an 11, you've got 3.2 meters of, you know, of stop or of focus or whatever. The benefit is that when you're doing the work, you're seeing it in real time. You know, it's like when somebody shoots a shot with a strobe, there's that split second that everything fires, right?
Yep.
Do you really know what that looks like until it pops up on a computer? You don't. You don't, because you're blinded for that moment.
That's
when
correct.
the actual photograph is being taken, you as a human being are removed from the visual equation in a way. Now, there are professionals that are great at it. Annie Leibowitz, I'm talking to you. But for us, the way we were doing it is we decided to go. It was the slow shoot movement.
That is what we're calling it now, the slow shoot
as opposed to the slow food movement, we went with the slow shoot movement. Which allowed us to use cooler lights. Did you think that the food suffered a lot from the way we were shooting?
I don't think the food suffered from the lighting. I think the food potentially suffered from the technology. But we'll get into that later.
From the phone itself.
From the phone itself.
Well, that's for sure. Oh my gosh.
Speaking of phones, we have gotten so many comments because you have said, you know, shot this with my iPhone.
Yeah.
We've gotten, I mean, the nerds of the world saying the camera on this phone is better than that phone. How could you not use that phone?
The Galaxy.
Can you please set the record straight on why you chose the iPhone?
Well, let's face it. I mean, we kind of did it together. We had them, and it's the most populous tool. There were apps available that allowed you to take better photographs.
That is true.
What was it? You used was it Pro Camera something or other?
We did use Pro Camera for
Pro
this.
Camera was a great app because it allowed you to separate the stop from the focus.
Yes.
And so you got to affect lighting and focus in a different way. We were able to shoot zones. We didn't shoot HDR, did we? I mean, we were not really. But I think that number one,
It's your everyday phone.
It's my everyday phone.
It's the everyday cook.
I mean, and it was everyday cook, so I felt the necessity for familiarity.
Fair
now, granted,
enough.
I don't carry around a 6S. I don't carry around a 6X Plus in my pocket every day because my butt's not that big.
Too bad we didn't have the new one with the dual lens.
Oh my God. Apple.
Would have been so easy.
Oh my God! Could you just throw a little love our way? But we did, but that was actually the best platform for it. But we had to like build stuff to shoot this because the way we were having to shoot the split frames.
Oh yeah.
There's no technology for it. We were hacking this stuff out of tripods and sliders and all the things that we didn't think would be we just didn't think would be a problem until we knew. Because basically it's like, guys, when you look at the book and it looks like, you open it and it's a 10-inch by 10-inch book. So when you open it, there's a photograph that's 10 inches by 20 inches. Well, guess what? Because of the resolution on the iPhone, that's actually 2 photographs that have been stitched together and getting that right.
Not in all cases.
Well, not in all cases.
Some
not in all
cases
cases.
There's
but in some of them there are, and in that case you had to actually find a way to move and frame the shot in such a way that those images could still be stitched.
Let me tell you, that slider.
Yeah.
No bueno.
You didn't like the slider.
Hated the slider.
I'm sorry.
So we're going to come back to the iPhone and the photos themselves.
Okay.
But I think
you're the one that should talk about that.
I think what people really want to dive into are the recipes. And Adam Bennick from Facebook asked, what is the hardest step in the cookbook process for you and how do you overcome it?
Editing what goes in, what's the theme? What's in, what's out? What holds this together? You're going to do a book with 100 recipes, and I like 100. I think 100 is a really good number. But like, what's there? What isn't there? And a lot of, everybody that writes a cookbook takes a different approach on that. Is it by ingredient? Is it by dish? Is it by, whether it feeds Jeffrey or not? It's a little line of garden joke.
Little.
We decided to go with time of day.
You decided.
Well, to me, organization is huge. I have to know how the book's going to be organized.
What did you just say?
Okay, I am the most unorganized person. No, sorry. You know what? I should have said categorization.
Fair enough.
I should have said categorization because it's like when I wrote my baking book, I'm Just Here for More Food. I was completely confused as how to do it until I realized that I really needed to divide the book, to categorize the book by mixing method. Once I had that, then I was able to actually function. So no, organization is, as much as I like to say organization will set you free, I am the least organized person on the face of the earth. I suck. I know that. I'm terrible. But if I can grasp categorization, then I'm in a better place. So once I realized that the book should be done by time of day, that helped a lot to decide what's in, what's out. What are you going to make and eat between 7 and 11 in the morning, and what are you going to, do you put a cocktail in there? Do you man up and put a cocktail in there? Heck yeah, you do. And that's when you start realizing that certain dishes become great opportunities, like the breakfast carbonara, which I know you're very fond of.
Pasta for breakfast, people.
Pasta for frickin' breakfast. But I don't know that I would have come up with that had we not gone in the direction of the time of day structure.
Fair enough.
So once you get a structure, you very often can find your way through the dishes. But what you really decide to put in there, and this book was the biggest challenge for me because it's my 8th book, but it's my first self-portrait. That's all that this is not. I don't have a good eats to hide behind. I'm not teaching a lesson. There's no hyperbole. There's no theatricality. This is who I am at this point in my life. Culinarily speaking, this book is me. It's a self-portrait, which I've never done. And so that makes it scary. But that's also why the day that we shot the French fry shot upside down in bed, I was like, that's the cover of the book. That is the cover. And remember, everybody pushed back about that.
Well,
the publisher didn't want to do that at
all. Into that even further. At all. We'll get there.
But then when you start realizing I'm making a self-portrait,
things become very personal.
Things become really personal, which makes it easy and not easy, and risky. I'm going to say it, there's ugly food in this book.
I can actually attest to that, but God, is it good?
We're talking about the midnight mug cake. Or are you talking about something else? The midnight mug cake is ugly.
But what you're going to consume is just chocolate goodness.
Yes, but it's a great shot. I like the shot, looking over the microwave oven. And so that's one of those places where we went in situ, to get the shot. And then there are shots of things that are, I think, really, really just beautiful in the book. If I was going to frame a giant photograph and put it up on my wall, it would probably be those chickpeas. Yeah, that chickpea shot with the roll of film Which, by the way, when you see, I don't even know what page that's on, but there's a big spool, big roll of 35 millimeter movie film, and I bought it in a junk shop in New York, not knowing what it was, and it is actually a print, a positive print of the very first Buck Rogers in the 21st Century show, which I think was on ABC. I may have that wrong, from the 70s, which I hated.
On an Apple box.
And we put it on an Apple box, which is completely a motion picture tool. But once you know that you're going to make it personal, then you're free to use the plates you want or mix up, U.S. Army, surplus forks with plastic spoons.
Which it happened.
We did. We totally did. Or to shoot on old maps, and like we did for the po' boy from New Orleans, or to do really personal things like the shrimp cocktail on top of a sectional chart, a pilot sectional chart. So. But you run the risk of alienating people or have people not get it, or not like you. They could look at this book and say, well, guess what? We don't like you. But at some point, you just commit to it.
Going along with the personal aspect of this, Heather Hansen from Facebook asked, what is the origin of these recipes? Are they things you wanted to recreate from previous experiences, from your travel, etc.?
90% of them are basically finely written down versions of stuff I've just made for a long time, and have tried to figure out or make better. Salisbury steak. I love Salisbury steak. I've always loved Salisbury steak. I've been trying to get Salisbury steak right for 30 years, and I finally think I do. So, but a lot of it was like, okay, this is food that I make, but I've never really written it down. I've never made it publishable, so it's mostly personal food. There are a few dishes there that were inspired by travels or things that I just wanted to do. The sesame noodles in the back of the book. I don't make sesame noodles that often, but I will now because I always just wanted to get that figured out. But most of them are things that I've made in some form or another for a long time.
Let's set the scene of the actual shoot for a second.
Well, we're actually in the same room.
We are in the same room right now.
We're in my.
It's a little cleaner.
My studio in Marietta, Georgia, and it's littered with guitars right now because we've been making a CD here. But this is where we did most of the shooting in December of 2015.
While we were shooting, fans wanted to know, especially on Twitter, we know this person well, Angry Alton Brown.
Angry Alton Brown.
Did you listen to any certain types of music when you were shooting this book?
We listened to a fair amount of music, didn't we?
24/7.
We had music always going because we have a boom case, which is really cool. Suitcase turned into a stereo, Bluetooth stereo. Do you remember anything we were listening to? I don't actually remember.
I have to say that Brian, our grip, put a lot of, I feel like, reggae on sometimes.
It seems like there was a lot of reggae. There was a lot of... There was ganja music basically going. There was a lot of reggae. I do remember reggae, and then I would come in and put on. My default is jazz. Late
that was
50s,
calming at night. I have
60s,
to feel like that came in on at night.
Cool jazz, a lot of Chet Baker, a lot of Miles, a lot of Coltrane. So we were doing a lot of jazz, and then we would pep things up. But I would say that the overwhelming majority of the music was jazz.
Okay, let's talk about props. We had mentioned that we didn't go out, we didn't go renting. Army surplus happened. Hubcaps. He wasn't joking before. Hubcaps have happened.
It's one of the best shots in the book, I think.
I agree.
The roasted salsa with chips on.
In a day where Instagram is so highly stylized, and that shot is taking forever to set up, and by the time it's done, the food is cold. You went, this is how I would really eat it. Give me a plastic fork. Why? One,
honesty, but that's a weak answer.
I don't think so.
I think that some of it is, what? Here's the thing. If you're going to do a personal project like this, what we did, yes, some of the stuff was here. I went out and I bought things, but I bought things specifically for myself. Yes, I went out and bought a new hubcap. Remember when I came home
Luckily.
Remember that day I came back with a brand new Kodak slide carousel.
You did.
And I was like, well, and it was funny because I had been thinking about that magnificent Madman scene when Don Draper is naming it the carousel. And I grew up around those things because my father was a photographer. And so the sound of carousel projectors and everything. And when I looked at that and thought, oh my God, that's about the size of a saltine cracker, and decided to use it as a plating device, I was trying to, and I realized this only in retrospect, Sarah, quite honestly, is that a lot of these dishes I'm trying to connect to something. It's like, when we made we did the shots for the only shot that we had to really redo, like seriously redo, for the hero sandwich, we shot on this tray, and this old lunch tray that we ended up not using in the book because we were so worried about the rights for the art because there were superheroes painted on the tray, but nobody recognized them. So we didn't use it. But there was something about trying to connect to a very specific time and space in my life, which, at middle age, I look forward, but I also kind of look back and sort through memories to pull out pieces of things. And so I think that every single one of the shots in the book has connective tissue to a deeper portion of life. And why shouldn't food do that? And I don't think we ever made a decision of, we're going to plate this on this because it looks great.
I have to say that the minute we did do that, we were wrong.
We were wrong.
There were moments where we were like, oh, we should use this and this, and then we were wrong.
The breakfast carbonara that you and I are both really fond of, one of the best dishes in the book, is in an old army
But it wasn't
mess
originally.
Kit.
It is one of those dishes that is so beautiful. It deserves a plate. However, it is so beautiful that it actually belongs in a
mess
surplus,
kit,
yeah.
in an army surplus. But the thing is that I ate out of something like that when I was in the Boy Scouts. So there was that connectivity there. So I think that in the end, we imbued each one of those dishes with a very specific personality, whether it was, shooting the barley water on a ping pong table because that's a goof on Wimbledon, or doing the shrimp cocktail on a VFR sectional. We made each one of them personal, which is easy and hard at the same time. But we never shot anything in the book because it was pretty.
Oh, no.
If it was beautiful because of some juxtaposition or some honesty or some little. It's like one of my favorite shots in the book is the on the page with the Thai iced tea, because I love the way the cream. You caught the shot in mid pour as the cream was curling and swirling naturally around inside the tea, and it was like a quarter second before that shot didn't exist, and a quarter second after it didn't exist. So one of the things that the book does that food books don't in general do is capture a moment that didn't exist before. So there's a documentary level to it, because you had to hit the button at a very specific time. That doesn't happen in food photography.
All the food on this shoot was real.
It was the real food. We didn't fake anything.
And we ate it all afterwards.
And we ate most of it, which is I've got physical proof of, and drank all the cocktails.
So this book is obviously personal. It's called Everyday Cook.
Yeah.
Let's get really personal.
Okay.
The cover photo is of you
in bed, upside down.
Number one, everyone's going to ask, is that your real bed?
No. That's an inflatable bed that we brought into the studio.
Deborah Russ on Facebook asked, who came up with that cover photo?
I don't remember.
You did.
Did I?
For sure.
Why did I just say that it was a good idea to have French fries in bed?
First of all, here's what happened.
Because I honestly don't remember how we came up with this shot.
You just said, these are so good, I would eat them in bed. We went to take the recipe photo. I was up on a ladder very high up. And you said, looking up at me, this is the cover photo. And I laughed at you.
I remember that part because it was upside down.
Because this was the recipe photo.
Yeah.
And it became.
I knew the second that we shot it that it was the cover. It was the cover.
Judy Ratcliffe on Facebook has a really funny question. How long did you have to lay in bed with a cold French fry in your mouth? First of all, there's no such thing as a bad cold French fry.
Yeah. The worst part was that I kept drooling. When you put the French fry in your mouth and your saliva, I mean, if you love French fries the way I do, you like your mouth, you want the French fry. I don't care how old it is. I mean, I'm one of those guys that if I found a 3-week-old French fry in my bed, I would probably still eat it. I probably would. So that was the hard part. But, people don't realize the hard thing about shooting something, and you learned this, you're shooting a shot where there's flesh tones and French fries in the same shot. It's very hard to get them both right.
Oh, goodness.
Especially when the French fries are in a red basket.
Yeah.
And you're in white sheets.
Yes. And a black shirt.
And a black shirt.
Thank you for that, by the way.
You're welcome. I could have made it a little bit harder. We could have gone, if we had gone with gray sheets.
French fry bedding.
Oh, French fry bedding would have been great. So it was a very difficult. Well, I don't even know. The
shot itself was not difficult. I have to admit.
Did we light? Was that natural lighting, or did we light?
That was lit.
I don't even remember. We lit that.
Yeah, that was lit.
Well, I knew the second that I saw it, and I remember fighting with the people, the publishers, about that. Remember?
I mean, you have to admit it is different.
They're like, you can't have a picture of yourself upside down. No one will know who you are. I'm like, oh yeah, they will. I'm very proud of it.
Neil K. from Twitter asked, and I'm really excited to hear this answer, what happened on your longest day working on the book, and what made that day take so long, for good or ill?
Fighting with you.
We never fought.
Oh, hell yes, we did. Oh my gosh. There were personalities involved, and I'm a control freak.
As you should be. It's your book.
And you're a perfectionist. So I was letting go of a job that I normally would have done myself for good reasons. I think that some of the longest days were days where we did something and just knew we didn't have it.
I know exactly which one I can.
Go ahead. Why don't you tell me about the
very last day of shooting? Do you remember what happened?
That was the day that we ran into the issue with the chicken Parmesan balls, right?
Because we needed to shoot a cover.
We thought that we were going to, because we thought at that point that no one was going to accept the French fry shot.
No, it wasn't even a possibility. You said, "Oh crap, we didn't shoot a cover.
We didn't shoot a cover for the book,
and I need to be in it." And it
Wait
was
a second. If I'd already
5 o'clock at night.
If I had already decided,
no, you said it in bed that this is the cover. We all laughed.
Well,
we didn't believe you.
No man should be held to what he says in bed.
Yes, I agree with that. I think we all laughed, not believing you actually meant it.
But I did.
It wasn't until.
And then we all of a sudden realized, holy crap, we haven't actually shot a book cover.
We haven't shot a book cover. It was 5 o'clock in the evening. And we had just finished one of the more difficult shots, which was the chocolate whipper in the bathroom. I was standing on top of a toilet.
Yeah, chocolate mousse on a toothbrush. I don't know where that came from, but yeah.
We came outside and said,
we don't have a cover.
We don't have a cover. Megan whipped up the chicken meatball Parmesan because that photo is stunning.
It's also a fantastic dish.
I could not,
fantastic dish.
For the life of me, nail that shot.
We tried and we tried. How many exposures? I don't know how many shots we
Hundreds.
actually took. 100.
Hundreds.
Easily.
And then I gave up. I think I walked back just crying.
And then we quit.
Mm-hmm. I think
that happened. I mean, I'm glad, because if that shot had come off, it would be on the cover of the book. And I'd be sad. So in the end, I'm not saying that I sabotaged the shot. I didn't.
Oh, it wasn't you.
But because I love those chicken Parmesan meatballs, but I'm glad that in the end it didn't take, because in the end, I think deep down I always knew I wanted that bed shot on the cover.
Speaking of not taking, Elizabeth Kern from Twitter asked, what was the toughest recipe to capture with the iPhone?
You answer that. You took them. I know what I think.
We have different opinions on this, I feel like.
Let me guess. I'm going to guess for you. Because all I have to do is think about the shots I know you don't like. You hate that yogurt dip shot.
Hate it.
You hate it because I made you shoot it straight down in a very difficult I got this great vintage kind of crudité tray that I wanted to do this thing in. But it had a handle that swung up horseshoe style, and it wasn't removable, and it came up horseshoe style. And for some reason, no matter what you did, the camera wanted to look at the handle.
Could not capture anything else.
Could not do it. And I was doing it on a black-topped gaming table. So it was dark. All a study in contrast, and I know you never liked that shot. But I would also argue that the mussels miso shot, because of all the steam. Remember, the camera had fits over that shot.
I would have to say before that, though, it's that lone chicken wing.
Now, see, we disagree on the lone chicken wing.
We do. Let me tell my side, and then you can tell your side. Here's the problem with the iPhone. When you have a very dark surrounding environment and you have a glossy piece of food,
Glossy's the issue.
the iPhone cannot focus a clear shot on the glossy food
No matter what app you're using, you can't pull.
because it's dark. It was the
Well,
lighting.
you were trying
on
to
that
focus
one.
on the actual glare, weren't you?
Well,
Because
it was a spotlight. It was a spotlight on the chicken
yeah,
wing.
I remember. It's a single dado light. It's kind of light.
And
that you
I,
use
at
to-
that moment, realized the limitations of using a cell phone. But that was mine. I know you have a different opinion.
But I
on this
like
photo.
that shot because
Yes, you do.
I like the fact that it's really a shot of a giant pile of bones with one chicken wing left, and I like that. It's like a joke to me. It's like, oh my gosh, she's going to take the last wing. So instead of a huge, plentiful bounty of chicken wings, there's one and a bunch of bones, which I like. I like that there's this spotlight on the last player on the stage. Is it a harsh photo? Yes. Is it a pretty photo?
No.
No. Is
There
it a
are bones
rewarding
in it.
photo? I think yes.
It's a creative photo.
It's a creative photo. Does the food look great?
No.
I disagree
Well,
with
I don't
you.
think you can make empty bones look good.
But
Yeah.
if they're a pile of empty bones and somebody ate the food,
That means
so
it
the
was
food
good
must have been
food.
good. So it's kind of, you got to get into the subtext of the photo.
Tasting the food should always rank higher.
That's
than
a shot
the
of
look
eating. That's a post-eat shot rather than some kind of food porn shot where it looks like nothing ever happened to the food.
hate
Most
those.
food shots looks like nobody's ever touched it. Nobody's ever going to touch it.
Or fussed with it too
Or
much.
fussed with it to death. And the food in this book looks like somebody's eating, has eaten it,
'Cause
is
we
eating it.
have.
There are bites taken out of things. Things are cut. Things are in process of being served in a very real and visceral way.
Really coming out of the oven.
Yeah,
Legitimately.
actually, legitimately, or smoker, like that very dark and moody rib shots, like something out of a film noir movie.
It was
from
really
the
late.
40s. Was really late. It's coming out of the smoker. There's one light, and most of the frame is black except for this sheen across the back of these baby back ribs, and it's not baby back; they're St. Louis ribs, but and that's one of the reasons that I think it's a beautiful shot.
Kathy from Twitter asks, are there any recipes you wish you could have included but didn't make the cut for one reason or another?
I'm sure there are, but I don't remember them. Because once they were gone, they were gone. They were like, okay, that's out. And I forgot about it.
You really just had to let them go and
I
focus
let
on
them
what
go.
was left.
I totally let them go. I had a bigger problem trying to justify ones that I wanted to leave in.
Give me an example.
Barley water.
Because
Who's going to freaking drink barley water?
Can you at
unless
least
you're English?
talk to me about barley water?
So
Because I think
barley
the
water
name itself is a little bit like...
is a delicious barley-based beverage that is famous for being served at Wimbledon.
But why should fans try it?
For a few reasons. One, it has a unique flavor. It's citrusy but nutty at the same time. It's extremely inexpensive to make, and barley is a superfood. It's incredibly good for you. And it's one of those drinks that Americans just haven't had, but I think they should. And I fought to keep the barley water in, even though I realize that it's a food that most people don't crave because they don't know it. So I'm just hoping that it looks interesting enough because, we shot that instead of, because we didn't have a tennis court, we shot it on a ping pong table.
Which we actually
Which
use.
we do have, and then we play ping pong. But to keep that in, to say, no, we're going with the barley water, or, we're going with other things that aren't attractive, like that midnight mug cake of saying, no, we're going with this hideously ugly but chocolatey delicious dish because it just deserves to be there. That's harder. It's harder to fight those battles because it'd be real easy to take them out.
Like catfish tacos and breakfast.
Catfish tacos are in breakfast. You know why?
Why?
Because catfish tacos for breakfast is awesome, just like breakfast carbonara. Some of those things are there to challenge people. I mean, to say, look, this is a cocktail for morning.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't think there's either. Or look at the late night thing. We've got some really groovy stuff in late night. And what I'm suggesting is, this is all for stuff you're going to eat after 10 o'clock at night. Does that mean it's the only time you can eat it? Of course not.
I know if I ask you this question on any other day, it might vary. But what is the first thing fans should cook from this book?
I'm going breakfast carbonara. I think that that's a really great place to start because it's an incredibly good dish and it's completely unexpected.
Unctuous.
It's unctuous. It's wonderful. And I think it sets a tone of, guess what? Not everything that you get in this book is going to be expected.
It doesn't follow the rules.
It doesn't. And then you know what my next one would be?
What?
amaranth wafers.
Those are...
Those freaking cookies.
I wanted to hate them.
Of course you did. Because it's...
No, I'm not a fan of orange zest, but let me tell you, I could not stop eating these darn cookies.
They're based on a grain that has become important to me, amaranth, which another one of those, South American superfoods. And it has... It's funny, you have one, and you're like, well, this is kind of weird. There's a funny texture, and the flavor's unusual. And then you're like, I'm gonna have another one of those. Just to figure it out. Just because I've never had anything that crunches quite like this before. And then you turn around and you've had 20.
Yeah, that happened.
I know.
Yep.
So it's like it's the big dessert surprise in the book is the amaranth cookies.
Similar to that question, but slightly different. Out of the recipes in the book, Ashley M. from Twitter asked this, which one do you actually eat the most often? Because this is your everyday cooking.
I'm going to say the cold brew coffee.
True.
The overnight oats and the weeknight spaghetti.
I can attest to all those, I feel like. They're all at the office all the time. I have 2 more questions for you. A little bit more difficult.
The burgers. Make them eat the burgers. I want people to try the burgers.
Which burgers?
You know the burgers.
The char burgers or the...
Well, the char burgers are great, but the Beale Street...
Oh, man.
People are going to be like, you really expect me to deep fry a hamburger patty? I'm like,
yes.
Yeah.
I think your fans trust you.
It's worth it. Or what was you said you had 2 more.
I have 2 more questions. Okay. L Train from Twitter. I bought all 3 Good Eats books. Tell me why I should buy this one.
You know what? That's a really good question. I like that.
I love this question.
The Good Eats books were about putting a television series into a portable, hands-on, manual-style edition.
They're like 100 pounds.
Well, they are kind of heavy. They're like 3.5 pounds a piece. They're almost every single recipe is there almost like a mathematical proof of a lesson. The recipes in Everyday Cook are simply it's just food. It's food that is unusual probably for a lot of folks, and it's what I like to cook and what I like to eat. There are no great scientific lessons there. I explain things.
People will still learn.
You'll still learn stuff, but that's not why those recipes are there. The recipes in the Good Eats books were devised to prove points. Okay? So they are a result of wanting to teach lessons. Any lessons in this book are secondary to the food itself.
Yeah, but don't you think that your fans who are diehard Good Eats fans will see lessons from the Good Eats book apply to this book?
Yes, but I don't think that's the reason for getting it.
Okay.
I think if I was going to say what's the reason for getting this book is because these are 100 recipes that you simply will not find in another form anywhere else. Yes, other people have made chess pie. Have they made it as chocolate meringue pie? I don't know. And it's a really good dish. So I think that as a collection of recipes, it is unique and very, very heavily tested. And I think that the photographs make the book worthy of being plopped on the coffee table.
This last question.
Last one.
I saved the hardest for last.
Oh, great.
Comes from Sarah DeHere.
You.
Me.
Oh, my gosh. All right, you're going to ask me this question.
I am.
Jeez.
What is your biggest fear about this book?
I think any time that you expose yourself in art, you run the risk of having people simply reject you. When you're doing something personal and letting down your guard, letting down your persona, like your Good Eats persona, your Iron Chef persona, and just putting it out there, it's an important step to take as an artist, just as the process was an important step to take for me as an artist. But with that comes real risk. If people don't like this book, they don't like me.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It's a self-portrait. So not only can they say, oh, your book's not very well done, and oh, by the way, you're ugly.
I don't think that translates.
But you've got to be willing to do that. But I'm still afraid of it. I'm still...
That's fair. I give you that, but...
I'm not afraid of anything else about the book, except that I might die on the book tour. Because it's incredibly hard. There's nothing harder than a book tour. Book tours are absolutely...
They're grueling.
They're grueling. It's a city at every day, sometimes 2 events in every city. Go, 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 missing flights, driving cars through bizarre weather and trying to get to that next town to, it's hard. That's what I fear most, book tours.
I hear that. Well, thank you for letting me interview you.
Well, you kind of did, and I didn't mean for that to happen. Well, so everybody, thank you very much for listening to this kind of special edition of the Alton Browncast. Is Sarah DeHere, the photographer of Everyday Cook, and I have discussed that project and what it has done. It was a big chunk of our lives and certainly mine, and for your first cookbook. So
5 weeks.
Your first 5 weeks of solid shooting and
90-degree angle.
And all at 90-degree angles on an iPhone. So I hope you get a chance to see it. Hope you like it. And if you get to cook from it, definitely the breakfast carbonara.
I agree.
If for some reason you find yourself compelled to obtain your own copy of Everyday Cook, just drop by altonbrown.com and go to /order Everyday Cook. That's altonbrown.com/order Everyday Cook. And if you don't like it,
don't tell us.
Yeah, regift it. Just don't tell me. I'm not giving you your money back. Talk to you next time.